I did my presentation on the theory analysis of gender and race as a larger community. There are more than 1 million LGBTQ African Americans living in the U.S. Out of those 1 million, 3.7% of all African Americans identify as LGBTQ. 34% of the transgender community are living in extreme poverty, compared to only 9% of non-transgender African American people. African American victims of hate violence are 1.3 times more likely to experience police violence, twice as likely to experience physical violence and discrimination, 1.4 times more likely to experience threats and intimidation, and 38% have experienced police harassment, 14% have reported physical assault, 6% have reported sexual assault. African American transgender women experience the highest levels of fatal violence within the LGBTQ community and are unlikely to turn police for help in fear of being re-victimized. According to the National Transgender Discrimination Survey in 2015, 63% of the participants experienced serious acts of discrimination. They've either lost a job, been evicted, dropped out because of school bullying, been physically or sexually assaulted, homeless, loss of relationships with a partner, family, children, or friends, been denied medical services, or even been incarcerated. 23% of the participants experienced catastrophic discrimination, which is having been impacted by at least 3 major life-disrupting events due to biases, such as the ones before. The National Transgender Discrimination Survey found that the rates of arrest and incarceration were excessively higher among African American transgender people in comparison to other racial and ethnic groups. These are some women that have been murdered. Bailey Reeves was shot after a party. China Lindsay was found in a reservoir. Dana Martin was found in a ditch. B. Love Slater was found burned in a car. What all these women have in common is that they are all African American, all transgender, and all women, and they were all murdered. In 2019, there were at least 22 transgender and gender non-conforming people that have been killed. Out of the 22 victims, only 2 of them were not African American. About 157 transgender people were victims of fatal hate violence, and about 111 of them were African American women. So majority of transgender people who are murdered are African American women. How I apply this to the systems theory is that those transgender women are directly affected by those in their own system. They've lost relationships with family, friends, children, and spouses. They've lost jobs in their homes. And this can take a huge toll on someone's physical and mental health, which affects how they interact with those around them, especially those in their own system. How I apply it to the ecosystems theory is trans African American women as a whole are largely underappreciated and misconstrued. They are at the intersection of inequality, and the whole community is affected by it. These women are afraid to even go to police or help in fear of being assaulted or being re-victimized. How I apply this to the feminist theory is that it emphasizes gender inequality and sexuality, and it focuses on promoting women's rights and gender empowerment. The social work values that I noticed, well, I've noticed multiple, but the biggest one I noticed was social justice. Trans African American women face social injustice every day because they are at the intersection of inequality because they are African American women and transgender, and efforts to help them focuses on poverty, unemployment, and discrimination. In other countries, in 1972, Sweden became the first country to allow people to change their legal gender. In 2016, Norway became one of the many countries that make changing your legal gender as simple as filling out a form. India is considering creating laws that would ban discrimination and establish favorable action for transgender people. There's also a global effort to remove being transgender as a mental illness from the DSM-5. My rebuttal would be, how would you feel if you or someone you loved was murdered for nothing other than the fact that they do not agree with or understand who you are? What if you lost your job, your family, your home, based solely on someone else's biases? African American transgender women deserve every right to their life as you do to yours. And those are my references.